Today we're going to be talking about complementary and supplementary angles. I think at this point most of you know the definition for complementary and supplementary angles, but we're going to go ahead and write this down anyway. Complementary angles are two angles that add to 90 degrees. Supplementary angles are two angles that add to 180 degrees. So when we're working on the questions today, we just need to pay very close attention to whether they're making them complementary or supplementary, because that's going to tell us what it is that we want to do. There is a little note over here that talks about if you're drawing complementary angles, you want your picture to look like this, where they take up the space of a 90-degree angle. And if you're drawing supplementary angles, you want to draw a picture like this that takes up 180-degree angles. So it looks like when your two angles are sitting next to each other, they're taking up the space of a line. So for question number 1, it says they want to find the complement of an angle that measures 35 degrees. So I'm going to draw a picture, and I have a 35-degree angle on one of the parts, and when I'm looking for its complement, the part that's here is what they're looking for. So a 35-degree angle, x is the complement, and what I know is that that x plus the 35 has to equal 90 because they used the word complement, which means x is 55. If you prefer on questions like this to just say 90 minus 35 equals 55, that's fine as well. For question number 2, the complement of an angle that measures x. So I'm talking about complements here. I have an angle that measures x. They want to know how I'm going to write this one. Well, if I wanted to figure out how big the angle was that's taking up the space where the question mark is, I would say that to figure out that angle, I would take the 90 degrees total and minus away the one angle that I know. So the complement of an angle that measures x is going to simply be 90 minus x. For number 3, the supplement of an angle that measures 105. Whenever it says supplementary angles, I want to draw my picture like this. I'm going to put a 105-degree angle here, and I'm going to label the supplement of that angle with an x. What I know, because they're supplements, is that together the 105 plus the x has to add to 180. When I minus 105 from both sides, I find out the missing angle measure is 75. It's what I need to give me the 180 degrees. Question 4, find the supplement of an angle that measures m. So in this case, my angle measures m. I'm looking for this one. Because they're supplements, they sit on a straight line. That means that the question mark will be equal to 180 minus whatever that m value is. We don't know m, so we can't do the subtraction. So we're going to leave our final answer just like that, 180 minus m. In the next section, we're going to be talking about some word problems, and in these word problems, you want to make sure that you are either drawing a picture or writing a let statement. A lot of times you'll see me write a let statement using a picture rather than actually formally writing out let x equal. So when it says make sure that you write your let statements, please remember that it is totally acceptable for you to use a picture for your let statement. That's going to be easier because up above we talked about what it is that you're going to draw every single time you have angles that are complementary, and you're going to draw a right angle and you're going to split it into two parts. Because if two angles are complementary, they have to take up the space of a right angle. And it says one of the angles is 2 times the other. So I might not know one of the angles, but the other one is double that. Together, what do I know about the 2x and the x? If they're complementary, then when I add them, it equals 90. So when I go through and I do this math, I end up getting that x is equal to 30. Now, please pay very close attention. This question is asking you to find the smaller angle. When you get that x is 30 and you substitute that back in, one angle's 30 and one angle's 60. So when they say find the smaller angle, this really is our answer here because 30 is smaller than 60. They could ask you for the larger angle, and they could also ask you for the measure of both of those angles. When I move on into question 6, the wording that I see in question 6 starts out with 2 complementary angles again, so I know that I'm drawing that same picture, a right angle being split up into two parts, and in this case it says a ratio of 2 to 3. Every time you have a ratio of 2 to 3, it means one of your angles is 2 times x and one of your angles is 3 times x. So this is going to be 2x and 3x, and they're complementary, so they add to 90, so 3x plus 2x equals 90, 5x equals 90, and when I divide, I get that x is equal to 18. Just because I find x does not mean I have answered their question, because in this case, they want the measure of both of the angles. So one of the angles is 2 times x, which is 2 times 18, which is 36. The other angle is 3 times x, which is 3 times 18, which is 54. So these are the measures of the two angles that they're describing in this particular question. When I move on to the next page, I have a couple more examples here. In the examples that are here, I want to set up a let statement. For me, that let statement is going to be a picture. It says find the number of degrees in an angle which is 60 more than the complement. This is telling me the relationship between the two angles. So what ends up happening in this is I have an angle that's the complement that I'm going to label as x. And then I have another angle that's just the angle that's 60 more than that complement. Together, though, don't forget, these two angles have to add up to 90 degrees. So the complement plus the angle itself has to equal 90. And every time I get an x value, I go back and I look and I say, okay, did they really want the x value? When I read what it says find the number of degrees in the angle, which we listed as 60 plus x. Not the complement, but 60 plus x. So my final answer for this, which is the angle that they were referencing, is 60 plus whatever x is, 60 plus that 15, which will end up giving me 75. Questions 8 and 9 change the scenario a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit, just enough that we're going to end up having to change the picture that we're going to use here. Because in number 8, it talks about supplementary angles, and we know that when we do supplementary angles, we always draw a picture that looks like this. In this case, they're talking about them being in a ratio again. When you have a ratio of 5 to 4, one of them is 5x and one of them is 4x. That's the part that you have to remember. If you don't remember that, you're not going to be able to do this question. And then because these two angles are supplementary, they add to 180. So 5x plus 4x is going to equal 180. 9x then equals 180. And x is 20. And again, every time I find x, I have to go back and say, okay, well, what was I supposed to do with that x? And this question wanted the smaller angle. I know that 4x is going to be smaller than 5x. So this is 4 times 20, which is going to end up giving me a smaller angle measure of 80. So 80 is my smaller angle measure. I have answered their question. When I go on to question 9, same scenario. In this case, they're talking about supplementary angles, so I want to make sure that because they're talking about the supplement that I'm drawing that same picture. And what they've told me is I'm looking for the number of degrees in an angle that's 20 less than the supplement. So if this angle is the supplement and I label it as x, this is going to be the angle which is 20 less than that. All total though, one of the things that I know is that those two angles add up to 180 because they sit on that straight line. So my x minus 20 plus the x, the angle and its complement add to 180. And I end up getting an x value of 100. This question wanted the number of degrees in the angle, not its complement. So I have to use this angle x minus 20 here. And I know that x minus 20, when I use the 100 that I got for my answer for x, will end up giving me an answer of 80. So my final answer on this question for the number of degrees in the angle is going to be 80. If you think about that, if this is 80 and this is 100, does that make sense? The two angles together have to add to 180, and the one that we had labeled on the left over here has to be 20 degrees smaller than the one that we had labeled on the right, and that holds true as well. So when you work on your homework that goes with this unit, please make sure you're drawing the appropriate picture, and please make sure you're paying attention to whether they're talking about the supplement or the complement so you know what it is that you're supposed to be adding up to.